The Nightly Business Report.
Good evening. Tonight, the IMF is the only way, according to Cabinet spokesperson Bandula Gunawardena, as significance on sticking to the current agreement is emphasized. The BRICS meeting sees a deal for expatriates in Sri Lanka to no longer participate at the Russian front lines. Stocks continue to be on the up as ASPI and S&PSL20 end in the green, despite some volatility due to IMF talks. And Sri Lanka aims for the moon in partnership with Chinese technology as China's deep space exploration laboratory ties bonds in Sri Lanka with Supreme Deep Space.
From Studio 24, here's Sina Mayadune.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Cabinet spokesperson Bandula Gunawardena said that no future Sri Lankan government will have room to maneuver with the International Monetary Fund deal, at least until 2028, as it will be the key for the island nation to come out of the ongoing unprecedented economic crisis and seek commercial borrowing from international capital markets.
His comments come as some of the opposition political leaders have publicly expressed their willingness to amend the IMF deal, citing it has burdened the public amid the economic transformation bill tabled in Sri Lanka's parliament is expected to ensure sustainability of international agreements. He said that in drafting the budget for the upcoming year, irrespective of the ruling government, it's imperative to address the loan agreements established by the IMF until 2028. By 2025, it is anticipated that the external foreign resource gap will not adequately cover internal transactions. Past trends suggest a projected need of $5,018 billion for this purpose. He said Sri Lanka will be able to tap the international capital markets in 2027, which will be for the first time in 8 years, provided the foreign exchange reserves reach $14 billion before that, as outlined by the IMF agreement.
After the crisis we faced in 2022, the economy has recovered now and we are moving towards growth. After consecutive quarters, 2023 third quarter and the fourth quarter recorded a growth in the economy. So our aim is to have a growth of over 3% in 2024. In doing so, keeping in line with the IMF program is very important. If you try to deviate from the program, returning back to a crisis situation, what we had in 2022 will happen in about 40 to 21 days time. So it's very critical to focus on how best we could keep in line with the IMF program. There is absolutely no way of any deviation. Secondly, the debt restructuring is very much important for us. Now we have reached the last stages of concluding debt restructuring. We have reached agreement in principle with our bilateral creditors, including the Paris Club membership as well as Import-Export Bank of China. So after reaching agreement, we are now in the stage of converting agreement in principles to MOUs. The memorandum of understandings will take another few weeks, I believe. But we are very confident that we could reach an agreement.
Foreign Minister Ali Sabri said no more Sri Lankan military personnel will be recruited by Russia for the war against Ukraine. This was after meeting with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, in central Russian city of Nizhny Novgorod.
Sabri had a bilateral meeting with Lavrov at the BRICS 2024 foreign ministerial session with developing countries in Russia. Sabri said on his social media page on X that the two nations reviewed their bilateral relationship, agreed to enhance cooperation, and addressed issues concerning ex-Sri Lankan servicemen in the Russian military, confirming that no further recruitment of ex-servicemen for combat duties will occur. The Sri Lankan embassy in Moscow said that the minister during the meeting brought to the attention of his Russian counterpart the issue of Sri Lankan citizens who have joined the Russian armed forces and sought his assistance in resolving the issues encountered by them. Both parties agreed to review the concerns related to the recruitment of ex-servicemen and take suitable action to arrest the situation. When a high-level Sri Lankan delegation led by State Foreign Minister Tharaka Balasurya and the Deputy Minister of Defence of the Russian Federation are to meet later in the month.
Sri Sri Lanka's state-run Ceylon Petroleum Corporation has made profits of 120.3 billion rupees, helped by a 20 billion forex gain and a lower interest bill, compared to 617 billion rupees when the currency collapsed in the previous year.
2022, the CPC posted a loss of 617.5 billion rupees, with 529.4 billion rupees coming. The rupee was busted through the unanchored policy operated by macroeconomists to force rate cuts and a failed attempt to float the currency with a surrender rule in place. The CPC had accumulated large volumes of debt by converting suppliers' import bills taken during times of forex shortages triggered by central bank money printing to suppress rates for flexible inflation targeting. The CPC has made losses and run up large debts, including in 2018 when fuel was market price and the rupee collapsed when money was printed for flexible inflation targeting. By the end of 2019, the CPC had ended up with 566 billion rupees worth of debt to state banks. By the end of 2022, the CPC debt to banks was listed at 87.7 billion rupees, and by the end of 2023, the debt was listed as 59.2 billion rupees. In 2023, the CPC earned revenues of 1,343 billion rupees, up from 1,193 billion in 2022. Cost of sales were 1,223 billion rupees, almost unchanged from 1,101 billion rupees in 2022. Meanwhile, on the electricity front, Sri Lanka's Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara has said that the state power utility, the Ceylon Electricity Board, had submitted its proposal to the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka for the tariff revision from July of 2024. The domestic usage 31 to 60 category saw the steepest reduction of 55%, with the unit price coming down from 20 rupees to 9 rupees. The minister said the PUCSL will determine the final tariffs after evaluation of the proposal and the public consultation.
The Minister of Labour has said that Sri Lanka will send around 6,000 workers to Japan over the course of the year. According to the spokesperson, the goal is to send caregivers, construction workers and workers in the agriculture sector to Japan.
So far, 3,223 workers have been sent to Japan. In 2023, the number was 5,647 workers, and in 2022, 4,518 workers, increasing the year's goals to 6,000. Accordingly, it was stated that the salary for skilled workers in Japan is high, with an average of an estimated 5 lakhs in Sri Lankan rupees being salary amounts. Sri Lanka has been focusing on sending skilled migrant workers following the ministry's announcement that the country will phase out sending housemaids who are considered unskilled and earn less. The government also plans to send 10,000 workers to South Korea this year in the production, fishing and construction industries. Sri Lanka also is sending workers to warring Israel. Workers sent to Japan will have to pass the required standards in the Japanese language proficiency test.
Let's take a short commercial break. This is the Nile Business Report. Welcome back to the Nile Business Report. And it is still going green for the stock market today as both ASPI and S&PSL20 recorded gains yet again at the end of today's trading session, keeping up the positive trajectory. For more on this, we have Kavya Senadira from Capital Alliance Securities.
Today, the Colombo Stock Exchange concluded on a positive note compared to the previous trading session, brought on by the positive sentiment among market participants and multiple block crossings. The market ended at 12,394.99 points, marking a 13-point increase from the previous session, with a healthy turnover of 3.7 billion rupees. The SL20 index also experienced an upward movement of 4 points to end the day at 3,687.99 points. Notable institutional engagement was observed across various sectors, with a significant turnover in Haley's PLC and John Kills PLC. The top 5 gainers of the day were SMB Leasing Non-Voting, Blue Diamonds Jewelry, Greentech Energy, Radiant Gems and Killarney Valley Plantations. The top 5 losers for the day were Lavscares Non-Voting, Nations Trust Bank Non-Voting, Renuka Foods, Renuka Hotels and Standard Capital. Foreign purchases amounted to 156 million rupees, while foreign sales amounted to 323 million rupees, indicating net sales by foreign parties.
The Sri Lankan market seems to be reacting to the decline in prime lending rates, and there's a high level of liquidity in the system with updates on the recent contraction in credit for the month of April. To understand the expectations for the market in light of these updates, let's connect with Zaima Jihan from First Capital Holdings.
Consequent to the continuous dip in rates at the weekly auctions, AWPLR is now hovering at one of the lowest levels in recent times. As at 7th June, AWPLR closed at 9.28%, which is over a 2-year low. In line with this declining trend, there has been an improvement in private credit during the months of February and March. However, in April, we saw a decline of LKR 16.2 billion, largely due to the holiday season. We believe private sector credit to remain weak in the current months because of the spreads maintained by banks continuing to remain slightly high compared to the AWPLR. As a result of the sharp decline in AWPLR, overnight liquidity in the banking sector improved significantly compared to the end of first quarter of 2024, recording at LKR 162.7 billion as of 10th June 2024. Also, overnight liquidity hit the highest level since January 2021, recording at LKR 200.7 billion on 30th May 2024. We believe that with the timely completion of EDR and the projected third tranche from IMF, a rating upgrade could be on the cards, and with this, there can be a further downward adjustment of the yield curve. Also, with the improving consumer behavior, we expect there will be an improvement in private credit during the second half of this year, which is projected to be at about 7.5%.
Gold prices fell today and eroded a part of the previous day's modest recovery gains, with investors waiting a key U.S. inflation reading and the Federal Reserve's policy announcement for cues on when the central bank will start cutting interest rates. Spot gold was down 0.5% at $2,299.68 per ounce, and U.S. gold futures fell 0.4% to $2,316.70. And oil prices were also mixed today, quite similarly ahead of the Fed meeting and inflation data from the US. Brent crude traded at $81.61 per barrel, a decrease of 0.02% from the closing price of $81.63 per barrel in the previous trading session. West Texas Intermediate traded at $77.75 per barrel at the same time, a 0.01% rise from the previous session that closed at $77.74 per barrel. The Sri Lankan rupee has depreciated slightly against the US dollar at commercial banks in Sri Lanka today compared to yesterday. According to the People's Bank, the buying and selling rates of the dollar have increased from 297 rupees and 14 cents to 297 rupees and 63 cents, and from 307 rupees and 20 cents to 307 rupees and 71 cents respectively. At commercial bank, the buying rate of the US dollar is unchanged at 296 rupees and 58 cents, while the selling rate also remains unchanged at 306 rupees and 75 cents. Now let's observe how the rupee behaved against the other global currencies. Let's take a short commercial break. This is the Nightly Business Report. Welcome back to the Nightly Business Report. In a historic move, Sri Lanka has made the first investment into space exploration industry when China's Deep Space Exploration Laboratory set up a new company in Sri Lanka with Supreme Deep Space Private Limited.
The joint venture company is now set to play a pivotal role in advancing lunar and Mars missions. Towards consolidating this initiative, one of the key persons behind the success of China's highly successful Chang'e 6 lunar mission, Professor Wu Weiren, the chief designer of China's lunar exploration program, visited Sri Lanka. The mission successfully landed on the far side of the moon in the South Pole Aitken Basin, a region that holds significant scientific interest due to its ancient impact history. Professor Wu Weiren's visit underscores the strategic importance of this collaboration, and the establishment of Supreme Deep Space is a testament to the visionary approach of leveraging Sri Lankan expertise in space science and technology. Supreme Deep Space Private Limited and China's Deep Space Exploration Laboratory, or DSEL, have outlined several areas of collaboration to advance space exploration and technology. The company will create a comprehensive database to catalog local expertise relevant to space missions. This database will include scientists, engineers, and researchers with specialized knowledge in areas such as astrophysics, material science, and space mission logistics. This initiative aims to streamline collaboration and ensure that the best minds in Sri Lanka are contributing to global space missions.
Sri Lankan Airlines has dropped pepper and salt packs from its food dishes served for economy class passengers since late last year and made it on demand. However, the airline has been continuing the supply of both the products to the business class.
Known as the king of spices, Sri Lanka's black pepper has a higher piperanine content, which gives it a superior quality and pungency compared to the spices produced in other countries. Earlier, Sri Lankan Airlines served pepper and salt in small packs branded with their carrier's logo. However, the airline has decided to drop the salt and pepper from its dishes, given only to economy class passengers. According to an internal survey, it was found that the majority of passengers traveling on economy class do not use the pepper and salt, and as a result, the carrier was compelled to throw the unused packets as waste. On the other hand, the food dishes that are served in the economy class, especially Sri Lankan food, contain salt and pepper, and so any passenger traveling on economy class is provided salt and pepper on demand.
The Board of Directors at the South Pacific Stock Exchange, the licensed operator of the stock market in Fiji, has announced the appointment of Sri Lankan Siraj Obesekara as its Chief Executive Officer with effect from this month. The appointment places the new CEO of SPX among the youngest chief executives in the stock exchange industry at just 34 years of age. He holds 12 years of experience in the corporate sector, having worked across multiple industries, including roles at a global banking and financial service knowledge outsourcing firm, a Big Four professional services firm, an Australian managed IT service provider, the licensed stock market operator in Sri Lanka, and most recently the governing body for the sport of cricket in Sri Lanka. His journey to leadership in capital markets commenced at the licensed stock market operator in Sri Lanka, the Colombo Stock Exchange, in 2016, where he progressed from the position of a senior executive to head of special projects as part of the Colombo Stock Exchange's CEO's office. The SPX is Fiji's only securities exchange licensed by the Reserve Bank of Fiji under the Companies Act 2015. A vehicle parade of locally manufactured and assembled vehicles organized by the Industrial Development Board, along with the Ministry of Industries, Sri Lanka Automobile Component Manufacturers Association and Automobile Assemblers Association will be held later this month.
The third parade of its kind will tour through Goldface, Lotus Roundabout, Fort, Technical Junction, Panchikawatta, Maradana, Borella, and to BMICH from 4 p.m. onwards on the 18th of June. The IDB, under the Ministry of Industries, is a key stakeholder in the standard operating procedure which facilitates automobile assembly and component manufacturing in the country. The roadshow will see a fleet of over 200 locally assembled vehicles parade the streets. IDB Chairman Dr. Saranga Allahaperuma said, "The IDB, which is the statutory body responsible for the development of all industries in Sri Lanka, has a mission to provide the strategic, technological and commercial foundation needed to encourage, promote and develop all industries in the country." The services of the IDB are of great benefit to the automobile and auto component manufacturing and automobile assembly industry in the country.
Sri Lanka has got a boost in the latest global startup ecosystem report compiled by Startup Genome, the world-leading innovation ecosystem development organization and the Global Entrepreneurship Network.
Though not figuring in either of the global top list or emerging rankings prominently, Sri Lanka's startup ecosystem has got positive reviews. According to the report, Sri Lanka was ranked within the world's top 10 for affordable talent and within top 30 in Asia in talent and experience and top 35 in Asia for funding. Reasons to move startups to Sri Lanka include access to talent, startup-friendly environments and supportive communities. Sri Lanka was also among the select Asian countries whose ecosystems were highlighted. Launched in London Tech Week, the report is in collaboration with the Founders Forum, Informa Tech and London and Partners. The GSCR analyzes data from over 4.5 million companies across over 300 entrepreneurial innovation ecosystems and features rankings that indicate which ecosystems are currently driving innovation and deep knowledge about startup trends around the world.
Let's take a short commercial break. This is the Nightly Business Report. Welcome back to the Nightly Business Report. Asian markets were mixed today as well as traders shifted nervously while awaiting the Federal Reserve's policy decision, while the euro struggled to recover from sell-off fueled by political uncertainty in Europe. Tokyo's Nikkei 225 index gained 0.3% to 39,134.79 as investors awaited the outcome of a meeting of the Bank of Japan. Hong Kong's Hang Seng sank 1% to 18,176.34 and the Shanghai Composite lost 0.8% to 3,028.05. Australia's S&P ASX 200 slipped 1.3% to 7,755.40. South Korea's Kospi gained 0.2% to 2,705.32. Markets remained cautious ahead of a report on inflation in China due out tomorrow. The S&P 500 and Nasdaq eked out record highs, although investors were cautious ahead of this week's consumer price report and a Federal Reserve policy announcement.
U.S. stocks finished up Monday, with the S&P 500 and Nasdaq notching record closing highs, although investors were cautious ahead of this week's consumer prices report and a Federal Reserve policy announcement. The Dow rose 0.2%, the S&P 500 added 0.25%, and the Nasdaq climbed about 1/3%. Nvidia provided some support to the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq, rising nearly 1% after its 10-for-1 stock split went into effect. Some investors now believe the chipmaker might soon be included in the blue-chip Dow Industrials Index. The Consumer Price Index report for May is due Wednesday, along with the conclusion of the Fed's two-day policy meeting. The central bank, which will release updated economic and policy projections, is expected to hold interest rates steady. Investors will look for clues on when the Fed may begin to cut interest rates. Stocks on the move included Apple, which fell nearly 2%, as it unveiled a partnership with ChatGPT, among other announcements at its developers conference, which failed to impress investors. And Southwest added 7% after activist investor Elliott Investment Management disclosed it has built up a $1.9 billion position in the airline.
BP employees must disclose any intimate relationships with colleagues or risk losing their jobs, the oil major told staff in a policy update following the sacking of former CEO Bernard Looney for failing to do so.
BP employees must disclose any intimate relationships with colleagues or risk losing their jobs. The energy major told staff of its new policy in a memo. The move shows how much former CEO Bernard Looney's sudden departure last year is still felt. BP sacked Looney and accused him of knowingly misleading the board by failing to disclose past relationships. The updated policy, quote, prohibits employees from directly or indirectly managing relatives or those with whom they're in an intimate relationship. BP said employees will face disciplinary action for not complying with the new requirements, including potential dismissal. Thousands of senior leaders are also required to declare any intimate relationships with employees or agency workers occurring within the last 3 years. BP said workers are now required to disclose intimate relationships at work, whether or not they feel they represent a conflict of interest. The company concluded its investigation into Looney's conduct with the help of a law firm earlier this year. It has not disclosed its findings or conclusions, according to 2 sources. BP's board dismissed Looney last December and clawed back up to $40 million of his remuneration.
Well, that concludes today's Nightly Business Report. We'll see you again tomorrow with the latest happenings around the business globe. Until then, I'm Sina Maya Dine and have a good night.